All right, guys, I promise this. So, I watched the film of Poor Things before I read the book. And I went to the cinema, I enjoyed the film, and then I started reading the book. So, I enjoyed the film. I thought it was visually incredibly incredible. I thought that I thought that the music, the performances were incredibly interesting. Costuming was gorgeous. Just visually, it was a great piece. But I had my own reservations about it anyway, because I didn't feel that necessarily you could easily transfer an Alistair Gray to film. I'd already read Lanark, and I was very well aware of what a completely bizarre writer, completely unique writer Alistair Gray was. I was also very well aware of how integrated Scotland was into Alistair Gray's worldview. So I went to see the film, and I'd already heard and was a bit disappointed by the fact that the Scottishness had been stripped entirely out of the film, that it was taking place now in London, that the only Scottishness left in it was that Godwin Baxter, played brilliantly by Willem Dafoe, because you have to have a brilliant actor under all that prosthetic makeup, it spoke with a Scottish accent. But apart from that, any Scottishness had been entirely stripped from the source material. I think the further I started reading the book, the more I started reading the book, the more disappointing I found the film. Because the film took a fascinating, deep, complex novel and mined it for a conceit. The conceit being a female monster. I found the creation of a second monster, a second Bella, was I didn't know what the purpose of that was. I found the grotesque animal hybrids and the ultimate end of General Baxter gratuitous. I really did find the creation of a second creature gratuitous. I found the treatment of Bella as a character as incredibly it felt uncomfortable, the juvenilia of her, how juvenile she was. I mean, I already knew, because I knew what the story was, that the reason she's acting like a baby is literally because she is a baby, that a lot of her behaviors are a lot of infant developmental and small child developmental behaviors look very, very disturbing in an adult body, which is something that Alistair Gray is careful not to really dig into. Like, you're aware she's not quite right, but it is sort of like, okay, she's having to relearn things because she's an amnesiac, and we don't necessarily see her in that same light. It just looked a bit gratuitous. It looked a little gratuitous, especially as her language took I don't know that it ever truly developed into the mature language that Bella exhibits in her letters, especially once her political education starts and she ceases to be a hedonistic child and becomes a mature and thoughtful adult. I did find that the amount of sex, and I'm not a prude, I'm not saying I didn't enjoy it, but if sexual expression is the only marker of an adult woman, then that's a bit exploitative, and it didn't allow for Bella's development as a full individual. Everything is around the control of her sexuality. And while that may be a notion that is, especially with America, quite prescient or quite of the moment, I felt that it's very reductive of the idea of woman as sovereign individual, which is what this book is talking about, as much as it is talking about a country as a sovereign nation. It is also talking about the sovereignty of the individual and their right to be the person that they wish to be. Nobody tells Bella, no, you can't be a socialist, that's wrong. Nobody tells Bella, you can't be a doctor, that's wrong. This is what she wants to be, and when she remains with people who are happy to let her pursue that, who encourage her pursuit of that, and to reduce the identity of a sovereign being just down to a sexual appetite is, and oh my God, she spends 3 days in the brothel in the book. In the film, you would assume that she spent several years in the brothel, and it is extended, and it's boring. Like, ultimately, she spends 3 days in the brothel and then decides, I'm sick of being used like this. I don't enjoy this. The film makes it to be, oh, this is a place where she can explore her sexual expression. I was like, no, that seemed wrong. And then having her actually go with the general, rather than, as the book has it, them talking it all out at Godwin's house to prevent her abduction, to actively prevent her abduction, and the fact that it is she who is able to just say, go. And it so breaks the General Blessington mentally, that he has been just dismissed, that the great Blessington has been dismissed by a mere woman, that he can't survive that. And while I wouldn't expect the film to be capable of the Russian doll quality of the book, I think that the changes that they made, especially the loss of the Scottishness, the loss of the political, because by taking the political out of the story, which it's about colonialism. I mean, okay, this is probably not going to be so palatable for a film-going audience, but to take the socialism out of Alistair Gray, are you kidding me? He won the Whitbread Prize for this. No, yes, he won the Whitbread Prize and the Guardian Fiction Prize. You know what he did with the money? He gave it to striking workers. Okay? This is a man who puts his money where his mouth is politically. He gave his prize winnings to striking workers. So, to support a strike, to take that out of the book, to render that, oh no, it's only personal, to give it a neoliberal gloss, is like you have taken this great, dedicatedly Scottish nationalist, socialist writer, and you turned it into a neoliberal sexual fantasy. The more I think about it, the less I like the film. I love the book. I love the book. The more I read of the book, the more I loved it. I had to keep stopping reading the book because it gave me so many things to think about. I will reread this book I want to read Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde before I reread the book. I want to read Frankenstein. I haven't read Frankenstein, I know. But you don't actually, because Frankenstein is almost mythology and you don't need it. And actually, Young Frankenstein and the James Whale films will do in some respects. But I want to reread it with certain other reading behind me. I want to read Boswell's Life of Johnson because I think all of these texts feed into here. And because these texts feed into here, I want to reread it with the knowledge of those texts because I loved this book. I love Alistair Gray as a writer, and I am definitely going to be reading more Alistair Gray and bringing more Alistair Gray to the channel because he is just so fascinating, and it's exactly what I wanted. I had been looking for what is Scottishness, which isn't longhorn cattle and shortbread and kilts and bagpipes. What is actually Scottishness without it being packaged and commercialised and shipped off for export? And Alistair Gray helps to start answering what is Scottishness that is not a tourist trap Scottishness that someone like Sir Walter Scott started developing, the pacification and the essentially neutering of Scottish identity. So, can't say I love the film, not because it was a bad film, but because it really just took the source material, took the bit that it wanted, and threw away the rest. And I think you probably, you didn't need to take such a rich and dense book to do a female Frankenstein story, ultimately. I also did not like the idea that Godwin Baxter was hideously experimented upon himself. I found that it's like, no, he's Frankenstein's monster, and the monster created a daughter, like Data and Lal, Data's daughter in Star Trek, which I think would actually have been screened by this point. Don't know if he's a, but there are a lot of antecedents to this book and a lot of different tellings of Frankenstein. And yeah, I just I felt that the film really just cannibalized it for the bits that it wanted and then discarded some of the most interesting elements of the book. But anyway, that's me. And now you know what I think of the film. Go read the book.